I am making a butterscotch filling for our meringue pie. It's going to be butterscotch meringue pie. This is a one crust pie. You have to make a crust first and bake that in the oven, and then this is a cooked filling, so it's going to go on top of, you're going to cook it on top of the cooktop. So first of all, I need to do some measuring, and I need 1 cup of brown sugar, and this is packed. So I'm going to get the brown sugar. And one of the things you're going to need is a saucepan. That's something that you're going to be cooking on top of the stove. And I really do like making pie fillings, cream-filled pies, and making them from scratch with a cooked filling. It just, to me, they taste so much better. So there's my 1 cup, and I'll put that right in the pan. Move this out of the way. The next thing that I need, and I think I'm just going to start measuring things and putting them in the bowls, and we'll add them when we need to the recipe, is 6 tablespoons of flour. So you'll fill it to overflowing. There's 1. And use your straight edge spatula. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. Okay, so there's 6 tablespoons of flour, and I like to count out loud because if somebody talks to me, I may forget where I'm at on the, or how many I have measured out. So we need a 4th teaspoon of salt. Oops, I went over. Good thing I had that cup underneath to catch it. 4th teaspoon of salt, 2½ cups of milk, remember to get down to eye level so you can see where it's at on the liquid. This is for liquids. Don't try to measure this in a dry cup. 2 egg yolks, and I'll get that in just a little bit. This is, then we need 3 tablespoons of butter. I'm so glad they do this to the butter, so you don't have to put it in tablespoons and have to press it in and mess around getting it out. So just cut that piece of paper. One teaspoon of vanilla. Put that in another dish. Okay, there's the vanilla. Now, the eggs, we need egg yolks for this, but we also need clean egg whites for the meringue, because I want you to make regular meringue. So, if I mess this up, I have bowls, extra bowls. Many times I will use my egg separator, but since we don't have these in our kitchens, I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to use the eggshells, just the way you'll have to do it in your kitchen. So you need to crack your egg, and you're going to open it. Hopefully I didn't break the egg yolk. And you're going to move it back and forth. I don't have a very big shell on this side, but you're going to move it back and forth, and there goes my egg white. And I'm going to put the egg yolk in this bowl here. Now, Set this one aside because I need to crack another egg yolk. And if I would get any egg yolk in the egg white, I'd have to throw those out and start all over. What happens with egg whites? They need a perfectly clean bowl, bowl, beaters, everything to make an egg white, or to make a meringue. If you get any egg yolk in it, egg yolk has a fat. So any grease like butter or Crisco or anything, it will not beat up. So it's very, very critical, very important that you don't break any egg yolk into your egg white. So that's why I'm changing bowls here, just to make sure I don't mess it up. Okay, I'm good to go here. So I have 2 eggs. I have 2 egg whites that are fine. I didn't get any egg yolk in it. So we're okay here. We don't have to worry about our meringue. Our meringue will be fine. So I just set those egg whites aside because that will go on top of the pie after everything is put together. Okay, and I do want to say this recipe came from my mom. So this is a very old recipe, and it was a wonderful recipe. We really enjoyed it. So what we're going to do is combine the brown sugar, the flour, the salt, and when it says combine, all we're going to do is just stir this in the pan. You don't need a separate bowl. You can do this right in your saucepan. So you want the flour and the sugar all mixed up. And I have kind of a deep pan because I do want this, I want to have a bigger surface to cook on. When you're cooking with milk, you need to make sure you don't get it too high. And I know you guys still like to think it's going to do better if you turn it on high, and then this is not like your simmer lab where you start high and go low. This one you just bring it up to temperature very slowly. So this takes a while. Now when you separate those eggs, you will have a little bit of egg white left around the egg yolk, and that's okay. That's not a big deal. So we're going to add the milk and then the egg yolks right into this pan. So be careful when you're pouring this because you don't want to pour it all over the stove. And I'll add my egg yolks, break those up. Okay, this is mixing thoroughly because you want those egg yolks to be all mixed in. It's going to be a nice brown color. And you can see still a little egg yolk that's not mixed in yet, and it will get there. But by mixing the flour and the sugar, when we add the liquid, that flour is going to mix in better and it will not clump and lump. So I'm going to turn this on, about medium, not terribly high. And then we're going to cook this. Now, while this is cooking, you need to make sure you stir constantly. The flour is a thickening agent. It's going to make your pudding thicker. The egg yolk is a thickening agent. It will make your pudding thicker, but it also gives it some flavor. And this is all there is to making pudding. Once it starts thickening, then we'll know that it's about ready. You're going to heat the milk up, but you don't want the milk to boil. When milk boils, it gets a skin on the top of it, and it gets tough. Milk is a protein, just like your eggs are protein. So that's why we don't want to overcook them, but we do want to cook them a little bit. What?
Butter?
No.
Good. Good.
I changed to wire whisk because I wanted to make sure that this didn't stick. This seems to help stir things up a little better. And this is going pretty quickly now. All of a sudden you can just tell it's just starting to thicken. It hasn't boiled yet, but it is getting much thicker. Now, when you look for recipes, you can use this one. You can look for other cooked pudding recipes. Some of them will use cornstarch for the thickening. Some will use flour. Sometimes it might even be tapioca, like tapioca pudding. And those are all thickening agents that make the pudding get thicker. So what happens is when flour or cornstarch starts getting hot enough with the liquid, it bursts open and expands, and that's a very simplistic way of explaining how this thickening agent works. So as soon as this gets thick enough, and it's not bubbling yet, I want it to bubble just a little bit, then I'll take it off the burner. So we're very, very close here. But I have been stirring this constantly, and I think it's been probably 15 minutes or so. This, it's a kind of a give or take how long you have to do it, but I haven't changed the temperature. I don't want it to get too hot because it will scorch on the bottom of the pan and burn, and there's nothing that tastes worse than scorched, burned pudding. Okay, my pudding has started bubbling just a little bit, and we'll let it bubble for just a little bit longer. It's not a rolling boil, but it's just bubbles here and there. It has a nice butterscotchy color. That comes from the brown sugar, and I don't think you're going to be able to see the bubbles. And it's really thickened up nicely. And when it cools, it will get even thicker. So I'm going to remove it from the heat now. And this is when you add the butter and the vanilla. So this is one of those recipes that you can't just throw everything in. You have to read the directions, and you're getting pretty good at that too. Read the directions, and things go in orders. Your pudding would not turn out right if you added the vanilla and the butter before it got thick. So I'm going to stir the butter in, and it's nice and hot. The pudding's hot, so the butter will melt pretty quickly. And then what I'm going to do is put it in a bowl and put it in the refrigerator, because I want this to cool down so that we can put it into the baked pie shell. Some different kinds of cream pies would be like just plain vanilla. There's coconut cream, there's banana cream, butterscotch, chocolate. A lot of different variations of chocolate. So you can look in your recipe books and see what you find and see what looks good to you. Okay, butter is melted. I'm going to pour this into a bowl. Nice and creamy. It didn't stick on the bottom. It didn't burn. Now, before you put this in the refrigerator, if you've ever had pudding that sits out, it gets a film on top of it. So to prevent that film from forming, I always put saran wrap, plastic wrap. Wax paper won't do it, but you put it on top, right on top. You press it down on top of the pudding, and I had a little trouble with my my saran wrap. But you want it to go right on top. This will prevent that pudding from getting that hard film on top. That's a protein, and once it hits the air and cools down, then it makes that hard film. So this pudding is ready to go in the refrigerator to cool down. What I'm making right now is the meringue for on top of our butterscotch pie. It's called Butterscotch Merinque Pie. I have the egg whites. They've been sitting at room temperature. Room temperature egg whites tend to beat up better than cold egg whites, so that's at room temperature. The other thing that I'm going to put in with the egg whites is called cream of tartar. And I need a 1/4 teaspoon of this, so I'll just use the box to measure. You put it in the hole and you slide it out, and there's the cream of tartar. This is a stabilizer. What you're going to be doing to the egg whites is beating air into them, so you want to stabilize them so that they stay nice and fluffy and firm. So that's what I'm going to do, and I don't think I can talk over the beater, so that right now I'm just going to incorporate air into these egg whites. Okay, they're starting to get foamy, and as they do that, then you're going to start adding a tablespoon of sugar, just 1 tablespoon at a time. Don't add any more than that. We want it to go in slowly. Otherwise, you're going to lose the air in your egg whites. I have finished adding the sugar, and when you lift the beaters out of the egg whites, they form a stiff peak. Well, these are soft, so they need, what you want is to have a real stiff peak. They come up, but then they fall over, so I need to keep beating a little bit longer. There, that's nice. If you can see that. Pull them up and see they stayed up. The top's just kind of bent over just a little bit. So I can add the vanilla to this now. Just a little flavor. Now remember what I said about the fat. You don't want any fat or any grease or anything on that in those beaters. Because the beaters, the bowl, anything, because they wouldn't beat up nice and pretty like that. My pudding is cooled. I'll take the cover off of that. I'm going to put this in the pie shell. I have the oven preheated to 400 degrees. And we're going to spread the meringue on top. Bake this in the oven to brown the meringue. That's the only reason we're doing that, is to brown the meringue. we need to be very careful not to lose the air that's in our meringue. It will sink and like lose its volume if you do that. And that's what we did with all this, was to get that nice and tall volume. And you're going to spread this completely to the edges, because meringue pies will weep. In other words, they'll get watery. And that's not something that you want to happen. You want them to be nice and sealed, and no little water bubbles at all. Now these will need to be stored in the refrigerator, because this is a milk product and eggs, even though the eggs have been cooked. So once these pies come out, they have to go into the refrigerator. I hope I have enough meringue here. Spread it around. If I don't, we're in trouble. I always like to peak it up and have nice tall peaks, so hopefully I can. I'm coming down to the end, folks. Ooh, we're close. Okay, and what I do, make sure it's all sealed. I see some spots that aren't sealed. Meringue is an insulator. If you have meringue, you can put ice cream on top of cake and put meringue all the way around and make sure it's sealed, and you can bake it in the oven. That's called baked Alaska. It's just kind of peak it up just a little bit. Just makes it a little bit prettier. Okay, now this will go in the oven for about 8 minutes. We don't want it to burn, but we want it to turn a nice golden brown. I checked this the last couple minutes, and it's really getting nice and golden brown, and it says it has 3 minutes to go, and I don't want it to go that much longer, so I'm going to pull it out, and because it's nice and light and golden brown, just the way it should look. And if you don't, when you're baking, or not when you're baking it, but when you're putting that meringue on, if you don't get it clear out to the edges, it starts shrinking, and that's not something you want to happen. So that's what this is, a butterscotch filling, so it's butterscotch meringue pies. It's a butterscotch cream filling. So like I said, you can look in recipe books, or you can make this kind, whatever kind you want to make.